Got it. All right. It is 2:02. We are I'm calling to order this, our last strategic planning committee meeting for the school year. Let us do roll call. I'm gonna assume if I didn't call your name, you're not here. So Jeffrey Weinstein.
Here.
Todd McWhorter.
Here.
Kevin Olson.
Here.
Jerry Mead. And I'll note that she said here, although she's on mute. David Moore.
Here.
Mary Doan.
Present.
Elizabeth Garcia.
Here.
And Lorenzo Marasa. And I'll note that he is here. Just on mute on his iPhone. Okay. The Pledge of Allegiance. If we can all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the
United States of America and to the republic
for which it
for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. And 1D, approval of the agenda. May I hear a motion?
So moved.
In a second.
I second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No thumbs down either. All right. Number 2, public comments. Do we have any public comments for today?
None were submitted, sir.
All right. All right. So let's get into it. 3, discussion, information, and action items. 3A, final funding discussion. So where do we want to begin?
I think one of the things that would be good if we kind of go through, kind of again review the projects for the high school and the projects for the elementary schools, and then or secondary schools and elementary schools, and see, you know, kind of where we are short in either one and where we have money in either one.
Sure, Kevin, do you have
You have
set
that
numbers?
Excel spreadsheet, sir?
Yep.
Share screen.
Yep. Give me a
Oh,
second.
hey, by the way, while he's doing that, the home to school transportation bill passed out of assembly on a
Okay.
75-0 vote.
Wow, that's awesome.
So it's headed to the Senate, which I'm expecting they'll say, let's do it.
Home to school transportation. I guess we're gonna have to look into the details of that one.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, I want to get the correct version of this. All right, this is the last one we were working on here.
Should we go over measure P first, since that one's in the better shape?
Sure. Well, and I mean, in better shape is probably relative. We just haven't really identified a lot of projects for the other elementary schools with the looming Isbell project. I think that we just were hesitant to identify other large projects for those schools, but there's probably lots of things we could think of to do. But until we really get under contract, probably we can't really start other major projects with Measure P. I mean, we can continue to do the cleanup projects, but you know, building a new NPR or building some other permanent classrooms and wiping out portables might not be until we have a better idea of Isbell. That's at least my opinion. I don't know if anybody else wants to share on that.
So Kevin, do you have any, has Scott shared with you or anybody shared with you? Once we start, we get our plans approved by DSA. Once the plans are approved by DSA, you can submit for the hardship funding. How long that would take us to get that hardship funding?
Yeah, we had a meeting with OPSC last year about the hardship money. And they said that we would be able to jump straight in line. And so, you know, they approve, they fund either 2 or 3 times a year, whatever they can of the approved list. And so it would just be depending on where we get in line, but it could be anywhere from, you know, 8 to 18 months. So not years. Yeah.
Okay. But
Probably
even
not.
so, we wouldn't be able to count on that hardship funding if we started, once we sent the main building construction plans to DSA and they're working on it, we really can't do anything else major with this until we know we get a timeline on the 8.5 million coming back. Because if it's delayed for some reason, if something happens where we don't get that back in a timely manner, you know, we're going to use that 8.5 million for other projects, obviously, once we get it back.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
we'd
wanted
have
to
adjust
clarify that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, we could, if we had projects, we could start to get those in the hopper, start design those things, but we just wouldn't be able, we wouldn't award construction contracts
Right,
before we had ISBO done or under contract.
right. Okay,
Well, or even just at least having a better idea of how much, like, I mean, it-
It's really
I
hard
mean,
to say.
is it really going to be dependent on anything? Is anything else that we do going to be dependent on getting those hardship funds back? I guess is my main question.
some of the projects we were looking at is the multi-purpose room at Bedell. You know, that really their kitchen multi-purpose room cafeteria area is literally almost non-existent. You know, I wouldn't even call it that, but I mean, they basically makeshift something there. So that would be one of the, like, that would be a major project for the elementary school level, right? That MPR.
So I guess why is that contingent on ISBO?
Well, if Isbell, let's just say we're looking at Isbell main building construction, 25 million. If we don't get that $8.5 million back, you don't have $11.7 million to play with. You basically have $3.2 million. And that's gonna, and I don't even know if that would cover the NPR.
No,
Probably not.
probably wouldn't.
Yeah,
I
so
mean, I assume that that's like $6 million.
Probably.
about what it
I would,
was.
yeah, it could be depending on the size of it, but yeah, you're talking with everything included, you're probably talking between $5 and $6 million. So the idea would be that we could start the process of plausibility studies, cost studies and stuff like that, but we really wouldn't be able to go much further than that until we have some sort of a timeline on the 8.5 million.
I also think that on the elementary side, the other major projects that might pop up could be driven by if we decide to do a K-8 campus. So I think we were going to take this next coming year to study more possibilities about K-8s, which ones, what would happen, because to me, that would change, that could drive major projects. You know, if we decide that Bedell is a K-8, yeah, NPR, maybe even some more classrooms. If we decide that Glen City or Webster becomes K-8, you know, maybe more classrooms or something needs to get dropped there. So that would probably drive the major projects.
Right. Yeah, good point.
So I know that I would like to at least see on the other potential projects that like fleshed out more, right? I mean, even if they're placeholders, they're just potential projects, right? I mean, it's hard to have, an overall view of everything that's going on and all those puzzle pieces if we don't have all the pieces in front of us. Right. So like the Dell, we had a number for that before, and that's why I thought it was like 5 to 6.
I think we put 5.5 on it before.
So we should put 5.5 here, right? VAPA and STEM, again, we're not 100%, we're not even 25% sure what that's going to look like. But, if we even like, kind of put our thumb into the wind and say, well, about $1 million, about 2 million, about 5 million, about whatever, like to kind of know that that's going to be something that's going to cost money. Unless we think it's only going to be like $250,000. If it's, and again, it's hard to say. I know that it is, right? But I would like to at least, list those potential projects. So what else? There was something else that you would mention that wasn't on. Oh, the K8 potential, right? If we, kind of, in a sense, reserve, $5 million, $4 million to doing that, we know that that's there. And until we make that decision, right, we should know that we're going to have, to fund that somehow, so that we just don't go back down. We don't run out of money, right? Knowing that we still have some major things, right? Does that make sense? I mean, I think it makes sense, obviously, but.
Do we get reimbursed for any of those preschool facilities?
Yeah, there's a 75% grant that we can apply for once we get to the point where we have the preschool. We're still waiting from the CDE right now on that grant. We should hear this month, and then we'll start the design and application to build with 75% coverage.
So is that number pretty big number then? There might be extra funds in that one as well for some of those other things. I mean, we're not gonna spend $8 million on preschool facilities, right?
Oh gosh, that'd be crazy.
So, well, I think that it's going to depend on if we have 2 preschool facilities. And it depends on what we end up doing. So
we really might spend $8 million on preschool facilities because we pay for 25% of it, right?
yeah, so $2 million would get us at $8 million worth of, that's why I just did the math here.
I did it in my head, Kevin.
Mary, I'm right. I see your hand, so I'm just trying
I
to
just trust Excel.
let this finish. So,
I mean, that was just my question. It seems like that's a lot of money for 2 preschool facilities. If a whole multi-purpose room is 5 to 6 million. I'm just asking because I know there were the grants.
Yeah, I don't know, $4 million, we would need to, if we're starting from scratch, we're talking about a couple of rooms, an office.
Play area.
Who knows what else? Yeah, in that particular
Mhm.
parking in a particular space. So once we start to design, we'll know.
Thank
okay,
you.
Mary, go ahead. Thank you for waiting patiently.
I just have a few questions, and I have to apologize because I haven't been able to be at every meeting for the duration of the whole meeting, because Wednesdays are our IEP days and I'm frequently pulled to those. Just a question about the preschools. Are they going to be in new facilities, or we're not going to try and house them in schools that have room?
Yeah, we are. Right now, we are looking at Blanchard and Webster. Blanchard definitely has at least one room, and I've already talked with the principal about potentially adjusting so that the open rooms are all in the same spot where
Yeah.
but it still wouldn't be the ideal facility, and we would have probably eventually, especially given that the state will pay for 75% of the building,
Oh, okay.
want to put something new there on the south side of that campus. And then
Okay.
Webster, so we're trying to move technology out of 3 classrooms at Webster,
Right.
and that will open up that space, but it will still need renovation.
Mhm. I think there used to be preschools in there, aren't there? Isn't there still a preschool in that area?
There is, yeah, the MAOF, the
Yeah,
Mexican
yeah,
American
yeah, yeah.
Opportunity Foundation,
Okay.
still down there.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then I have a question too. About the Measure P, is it broad, just out of curiosity, is it broad enough in its scope and definition of when those measures went on the ballots to include things like VAPA and STEM facilities, or is the wording broad enough for that? I know, I remember, I don't know even know how many years, it's been a lot of years, Measure P and Measure Q, the campaigning that we did for that. So those are written broadly enough that we can use those for facilities for a VAPA or a STEAM school, a facility, broad enough?
Yeah, it's pretty open to facilities, and I have, let's see, I have language here because we studied that last year when we were doing
Okay,
strategic planning.
all right. I just was curious because I remember some very specific language in the measures that, like air conditioning and things like that, that was very specific. But in terms of facilities, I couldn't recall how specific the language was for those. Yeah, and I'm excited about preschool for our community. I think it's going to be great. TK was a wonderful addition here and has made a huge difference for our students. So I'm happy to see preschools coming.
Well, there's a couple other sources of funding too that were, I think we need to get a better handle on, kind of the whole landscape, because, some of these things, because we just passed how much into deferred maintenance at our last board meeting from the reserve?
$4 million.
$4 million, right? We should at least at some point start talking about what elements of this can go into, from that. We don't want to waste the whole, not waste, we don't want to drain the whole account, right? Because the whole point is to have a large deferred maintenance so that when, roofs and what have you come up, we can pay for it. At the same time, we can leverage at least some of that initial money. And then the question is how big is that fund and how much would we want to, kind of use from that at this point to do some of these things to keep our Measure P money, alive, so to speak.
I'd say these ones for sure.
And what about like the McKevitt electrical?
That's an upgrade. So I probably would
Is
say
it?
that's not maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I think playgrounds could probably fall under it, but I want to look at the language.
Okay. And are there the other thing that we're going to have to at least we should start tentatively thinking about is, it looks, for all intents and purposes, we're going to get a bunch of one-time money again this year.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the governor's May revise was worded is that there's an $8 billion tranche of money that's going to have very few strings attached to it. So that's going to be a pretty significant influx here. And seeing that we can't hire enough people to fill all of the spots that we want, I mean, we should at least have the conversation on how much of that do we want, could we potentially use for some of these things as well. I mean, it's not a done deal, but hopefully within the next couple months, we're going to know, that that's passed and how much we might be getting and what we can use it for.
Yeah, definitely. Once we get the details of it, it's going to depend on how long we have to use the one-time money. Those one-time block grants in the past actually had no expiration. It was like base funding, but it was a one-time base funding in a way.
Mhm.
So you could plop it in your reserve and keep it, which
we can't really do right now.
Right.
we have a limit on our reserve now, our unassigned reserve, but yeah, once, hopefully in about 20-25 days, not too much longer than that, we'll have the answers.
Mhm. Mr. McWhorter,
Well, that was gonna be the point I was gonna bring up is it's great if they give us as much time as we want to spend it. The problem is we just transferred money to our deferred maintenance because we can't have over a 10% reserve. So that's just what I was gonna ask too, is if the block grant will count towards our reserve, or I remember with some of the COVID funds, I think you were talking about earlier, Kevin, in one of our meetings, like some of that money didn't really show on our budget until we actually spent it, right? So it's show, so that was my question, is there potential for that discretionary block grant to also be that way, or likely if we put that in our bank account, it would just show as the reserve?
Yeah, so normally the line is drawn between state and federal money. So state money, they give it to you up front. It shows on your reserves, basically. Federal money, they like to do the whole unearned revenues thing. So the revenues don't show up until you use it. So I don't know if that answered your question or not, but probably since it's state money, if we didn't spend it, it would show up on our reserves.
Like Daniel was saying, that's gonna be a significant increase, maybe another 10% to our reserve. So
Yeah,
can we spend some of that money to save some of our Measure P money is what I think is what I was hearing Daniel say.
Yeah, it's gonna be really interesting because that is a pretty big chunk of money. And like you're saying, with this limitation now, it's hard to implement $6 to $8 million for us of spending in 1 year, responsibly, probably. So I feel like they'd have to do something to allow us to either restrict it and show it in the other column, or carry it in reserves as a special reserve.
That's why I was asking, because I was hoping there was some sort of mechanism that the state would think we're giving all these districts this extra money, which in of itself would probably put it at the 10% mark. And then we're going to make them spend it in 1 year. Okay, that's, I was just curious. Maybe there'll be more on it, right? Who knows?
Right. Well, I mean, and another piece of the puzzle, right, is our decline in enrollment, right, which we're hoping is going to trough out at some point, but, we will have to, address that at some level. And that one-time money, if we can spread it out, could help us, ease that pain as well. So I don't want to take that whole money and say, look we can spend it on facilities, because why the hell not? I mean, it's certainly, something that part of the discussion. Mary.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, I know that the schools the classrooms were air conditioned using bond money, I believe. But the rest of the facility, like I'll use our school, for example, the office does not have air conditioning, nor does the cafeteria. So I'm wondering if there's a lot of money coming in, is it possible to finish the job and finish, our offices are not, my office and the outer office are not air conditioning, and the cafeteria is not. The kitchen did get air conditioning recently, but the money was meant for classrooms, right, to air conditioned classrooms. So I know that they can't be used, or the decision was made not to air condition the school offices, but or the other areas. But I'm just wondering if there's going to be, I don't think it would take that much to finish it, so the whole school has it. But I think other schools are similar as well with, I'd have to ask, but I think there are other schools that may be in the same boat as us. It would be nice to finish it. So it's, we're getting painted inside and out. We're getting new hardscape. We're getting new surface under our playground, play structures. It would be nice if the whole school, if the rest of the offices were also air conditioned as well. If there's money that could finish it so that it's uniform throughout the school site. Just a wish, I guess.
I think even a little bit broader, I still would like to, or I don't know when the last time we did this would, to actually ask school site admin going, okay, like if you had an additional, amount of money, what can we do to improve the facilities, right? Because it's one thing to just say, hey, we put in air, which we said we were going to, right, all those years ago, and we slapped a new coat of paint. But is there other type of rehabilitation that needs to go on in those rooms? Does lighting need to be done, or does certain places need new drywall or what have you? I don't know, right? Because I don't know what the facilities look like, but to get them to as good a state as possible would, I think it'd be an appropriate use of this money. Kevin, what kind of sense do you have in terms of the shape, the condition of our schools?
Yeah, I think we can definitely use some money to finish the air conditioning in the offices and other spaces at schools that didn't get it. But so let's see, on your list, we are patching and fixing, as much as we can. There's other upgrades. We talked to the board about lighting at the last meeting, and I think,
right, yeah.
so that would be district wide, new LED fixtures that will help modernize the classroom a certain amount. So there could still be further cleanup of spaces. Some of it's just small. You have to just walk through and point to the different pieces, whether it's trim, whether it's ceiling tiles. We're doing as much as we can for those spaces as we go. But that's going to be continuing. I think at our schools, another major project is still going to be landscaping.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that right now.
Yeah, so landscaping both around the school, front and around the school, and our play yards. So not just playgrounds, but also looking at some of our schools have very large grass fields. And I think that we should start to consider some synthetic fields and see what the cost benefit analysis of some synthetic fields, and talk to stakeholder groups and see what the benefits would be. Obviously with the drought and other things, looking at it getting worse and worse, I think that would be a good option for us. Plus, on a maintenance standpoint, it's kind of, what do they say, 6 to 1, half dozen to the other. You don't have to mow grass, but you do still have to maintain those fields. You have to fluff them, you have to infill them, you do have to wash them sometimes, a certain amount. So they do still take some maintenance, but they should save money on the day-to-day and on water, and they look better. Right now, all of our fields are pretty filled with potholes, and we've been struggling to keep them maintained across the district. So
They're
So-
definitely not safe. You have to really watch where you're walking, I am constantly looking down when I'm outside because the gophers just love us. So,
I have an email opened to AYSO to start a conversation about how they can help us refurbish the fields.
if I may ask one more question, could the Measure P or other district facilities funds help us secure the schools a little bit better? I know this current school year over, I believe it was winter break, if I'm not mistaken, we put up a cinder block wall on the south side of the campus, which made a huge difference in safety. And prior to that, we had chain link with the neighbors and dogs, and we were very exposed on that side. But we did put up the cinder block, which made it really nice. And several years ago, I think it was pre-COVID, we put up part of a cinder block wall behind room 9 and over to the basketball court. But I would love to get cinder block or something other than chain link from where room 8 is all the way up along the perimeter of Casa del Mexicano. And that fence may actually belong to them, but I think they've been wonderful about supporting our school, and I think they would work with us if we wanted to put something up that was more secure. And then just our front entrance, it still doesn't lock. It's still not.
Yeah, we're working
That's
on,
been a project that's been ongoing the whole 11 years that I've been here. And we
Yeah,
still don't have a safe entrance where it's a push to get out, but people have to buzz to get in. We still don't have that. And you know, every time we have a situation at a school in our country, it just, you know, it's right there again, looking at me saying, ooh, this really, are we really as safe as we can be for our students? So.
By the way,
Yeah,
Kevin,
it's,
you're still sharing.
it's, oh, sorry. Huh.
Just
As-
want to protect it, bud.
This is how I work. As you're talking about it. Get it on the list.
Yeah. I think some of the schools have those secure entrances now, but I think because of our decorative front gates, it's been more challenging. So, but I think we're at a point where safety's just got to be the more important than the old gate that's part of the school, you know, the original school, or to see if we can do something to compromise. But
You know, and Mary, that I think that's a point well taken. You know, I mean, I think if you guys have been following what happened in Texas, you know, it seems like they closed the door when they saw the gunman, and the door didn't lock. Right. So, you know, just kind of really kind of a security audit, you know, and making any adjustments we might need to any of the schools, you know, would probably make, you know, a lot of sense, given that it's, you know, the stakes have been raised even higher, right? Jerry.
I just want to second what Mary said, as I visited her campus a day or so after the shooting, and I walked up and the gates were open, and I just almost had a heart attack. I think that should be moved to the top of the list of things to be done over the summer, is to figure out how to, especially if they've been working on it in 11 years, we need to do something, and we need to have it ready for September.
So, I mean, again, I wouldn't be, you know, opposed to keeping some, at least listing, even if we don't put a number to it, you know, things like landscaping or security on the list, so that, again, whenever we're reviewing these pots of money, we go, okay, right, we still have other needs. It's not just about, you know, the things that we're seeing in front of us, right? But there's a lot more we can do to that. So, you know, one other thing that I would kind of think about, right, or at least ask, you know, have we considered solar, you know, in any of our facilities? Kevin.
Yes, we have. We have considered solar.
Did you bring that to us?
Yeah, but
Oh,
do you remember the triangle? The last meeting, we had Schneider Electric, we had the triangle, the energy efficiency pyramid. The base of the pyramid is to reduce your usage. Before you add solar, which is the top of the triangle, you need to be as efficient as possible, right?
Yeah.
That way you put in the amount of solar that you need.
And not over. Yeah. No,
so
that makes sense.
So our first goal is, you know, there's these LED lights. We're looking at our HVAC through the AB 841 money that we just got. And we're going to do the energy management as a service with Schneider, which is a great service. We've talked with their guy a few different times. And we'll probably have to bring some policies maybe to this board or to somebody to kind of look through some energy management policies that we can roll out throughout the district to make sure we are being as efficient as possible. And then we can consider solar. But I can also say that since solar comes up a lot, we don't have the kind of traditional spaces that that are normally targeted for solar, like the big parking lots. Or, you know, new buildings obviously get solar. So I think if we were considering new buildings at Isbell, they would get solar. But our old buildings right now would need complete retrofit, and engineering would have to beef up the roofs to hold solar. So it's a large undertaking, but I've also talked to some people about pairing that in with landscaping potentially. So once again, some of the schools with the really big yards where they just have acres and the kids don't go to the far edges, we could potentially pull those yards back in a little bit and do solar fields around those spaces. So
Let's ask
Can't do
Elon to
solar
put
on
some
roofs?
roofs. Yeah.
what's that again?
I was just gonna say, you can't do solar on a roof?
No, so our old buildings will not do solar on the roof. We can do solar on new buildings, but not on the old buildings. The roofs, the structures were not built to hold the weight of
That
solar.
way.
Oh, bummer, because we don't
Come
have
on.
any, like, we don't have any space to give you for solar
Yeah, so
panels
Theo,
on the campus other than the roof.
right, Theo's pretty much not a candidate across the board for solar, but yeah, it's definitely something we'll look at. But first, reduce the usage
Mhm.
on solar.
Yeah, how much is it? How much is geothermal, like in terms of cooling, compared to, you know, what we're doing? Again, not that I want to redo those, but you know, on future AC projects, be considered.
Well, we won't have too many future AC projects unless there's technology that would cause us to really just tear out everything that we have put in at this point.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get it.
I've been working with Doug, you know, looking at our installations, and they're pretty reasonable as far as the usage. The big thing is about the policies, you know, around what temperatures we allow people to set their thermostats at and when they run. So making sure that the systems aren't running on the weekends, make sure they're not running after hours. Those are the big things where districts tend to just waste lots of money because the systems, you know, even the newest, most sophisticated systems, some of them are even more complicated, and they tend to, for some reason, the programming doesn't work and they end up running on the weekends and stuff. So that's something we're going to really be looking at as we install all the air conditioning and get it running at the high school and the Kevitt and finish getting all the offices done. We'll be looking at that energy usage curve to make sure that we're using it at the right times.
So
the other thing I wanted to say real quick on safety, we're definitely going to be doing a whole safety audit. You know, we're rolling out Raptor visitor management system, and we also have the emergency management system. We have all the licensing, but some of the hardware needs to be refurbished and implemented, and we need to do some training with front office staff, but we're going to get all that in place and ready to start next year. And we will be looking at the sites as far as entrance and exit and having strategies to help us with the safety situation. So fixing all the gates, whether or not people can get on campuses from other spaces will be top on the list. And then also, you know, we have lock blocks at pretty much all the schools. So that's basically it's just a mechanism that goes on the door so that the door can remain in the locked position, but it kind of goes in the door jamb. So the teacher leaves the door in the locked position, but it doesn't close all the way, so it doesn't snap. And then in an emergency situation, they can, you know, they basically slap the lock block open and then the door clicks shut and then it's closed. So that's been a pretty common and effective and inexpensive way to work on all of those, that locked door issue that you were just bringing up.
Daniel,
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I think that I appreciate Kevin's insight on what's going to happen to improve safety. But I think that what Mary brought up and what Jerry's bringing up, and that is these concerns that have been identified for some time, those need to be dealt with like today. I tell you why, because if something were to happen and here we are in a meeting and we say, you know what, it was brought up in the meeting, we told you so, and look where we are. So it may not be an entire, process of getting everybody on board, but for those schools that have identified a must-do thing, especially after 11 years, I think you need to get after it real quick, like that should be in your, and right now as we're discussing priorities for additional funding and all that, let's not get, the idea of what are we gonna do with the fields and all that. Right now, first and foremost is the safety of students. And I think that I'm sure that just as Mary's school has brought up something to our attention, I think there's got to be other schools that are in similar predicaments, and I think that it needs to be dealt right now. This is a hot topic, and it will continue to be, and especially, like I said, something that has been brought up to the attention of the administration in a public meeting and needs to be dealt with.
Todd,
Yeah, I was talking with Jeff today, and that was one of the things we were talking about, because we had 2 high school kids walk onto our campus this morning. And I know, Liz, I don't know if you still do it, but I know at the high school, they used to all have their little ID badges and it would hang around their neck. And to me, we've got in the habit of checking everybody when they come on campus, right, with their temperature. So now that we're at the habit and we have people at those gates, I mean, I think it would be a great idea if we started implementing, where people had to have their ID to get onto campus. And that way we know the people who are on campus are supposed to be on campus. And, if we have them only coming through X amount of doors and we know the other ones are secure, I agree. Obviously, everybody's on the same page with what's been going on, but we need to do everything we can do to make sure we're all in the safest environment possible.
so one other question, tacking a little bit, but still talking about safety. A question about the high school and the work that was done on Santa Paula Street between 5th and 6th. How was that paid for? Those crosswalks, the bulb outs, did we add any money to that project? I know you guys worked together with the city, but I don't remember how it was funded.
That would be before our time. So I'd have to look into the project. I might be able to ask Doug. I'm guessing the crosswalk portion is probably on the city. And then the gate and the fence there on 5th Street might have been our funding, could be. But I can look into that and get back to you guys.
Well, one of the reasons is that, CASA contacted me last week, and they're going to talk about some of the school crossings, some of the high traffic areas. And I don't know if, there's any, we should at the very least be working with the city to identify those and rectifying them as best as we can. But, and I know they're strapped. So, but it would be good, and again, I don't know how we funded it, right? If we pitched in, a certain amount, but, I would think that would be a pretty high priority of ours too. Mary, your hand is up, and then Jerry.
I'm getting a lot of use out of that button today.
That's good.
I recently, Mr. Weinstein, you may remember when we were talking about the crossing guards situation, and we got the crossing guard at 10th and Ventura Street, but I'd have to look up in my emails. There was information when I was talking to Mr. White at the city about upgrading our crosswalks, and he said that they have a plan to upgrade the crosswalks in certain locations and put in the flashing lights, similar to what is near Santa Paula High School. But
Right.
I don't know, because I asked about repainting our crosswalks and getting the push button flashing lights to work, because in the months of the year when it gets dark earlier, we have families crossing and staff crossing in the dark, and those flashing lights are really important because it's dark in this neighborhood. So I don't know what the plan is, Mr.
It's
Weinstein. you
18
may-
months,
No,
over the next 18 months. And that was, they have the money supposedly set aside to do it. But the last time I talked to Dan Singer and Mr. White, it was over the next 18 months, they were
Okay.
going to get it done, which, I'm not sure exactly what that means, other than we're not going to see it happen right away.
okay. I wasn't sure what the timeline was, or
Yeah.
specifically what each project was for each school site. I just know.
So we, Dan Singer and I talked our last meeting just the other day, we talked about if the lights aren't being done this summer or like very soon, that we're gonna have to probably have more crosswalk guards than we had normally planned, and that's fine. We just need to know. And so the faster the city can give us some, in other cities, what happens is not only Public Works, but the police department, monitor busy intersections, and they know the traffic accidents. They know, when people get hurt and all those type of things. And they also identify areas of concern and give it to the city. So I'm hoping that, we can identify 2 or 3 more other than the one that we did near Grace Steel that might help out.
Okay, just a FYI to everybody, Liz put a comment in the chat about the money for that project by the high school. So Jerry.
I was just going to comment that, Jeff, maybe we can, before our next 2x2 with the city, if we could get an update on that, because I talked to Cause also, and that's a major concern with the parents that cross. And I know we run into problems with Caltran and because of 150, but if we could get an update on that so that we can report back out and maybe push it along a little bit.
Yeah, and I'll make sure it gets also added to our 2x2 agenda.
Yes, thank you.
One last question I have, Kevin, about Schneider. I can't remember where the funds were coming for, the balance. They're coming out of the measure P or Q and or Q?
For the efficiency upgrades, I think we're going to use Fund 401, the
special fund
for facilities. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Facility there.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any other questions or comments about the elementary school facilities? Because if not, we should probably move on to measure Q. Are we, is there any action items that are coming out of this particular part of the discussion?
No action items, no. That I'm aware of, that we're seeking, but if somebody has an action item, we can definitely.
I mean, I think I would echo Lorenzo's comments on the safety, anything that needs to be done there, should be done as soon as possible. I don't know if that's, again, something that you guys want to present on at some point. Just a review of that so that the public is aware, of what measures we're taking. So, okay, so measure Q. Want to pop that back up there, Kevin? Hide your emails and other browser history.
All right. So this was the Q worksheet that we were working on last time. Just up a new pool, performing arts building. We have some money for kitchen. The 2 red, I think, were kind of designations that it's probably not enough for those particular projects. We have the state facilities money here, Fund 140, so we can do some deferred maintenance if we want to adjust where some of these would come from. And we have the CTE grant that's currently going towards the 600 building right now.
Well, it looks like we spent all of our money.
We allocated it pretty tightly.
Jeff, do you want to make any comments about, or Liz, any comments about, what's on the board right now, and what are the pressing needs?
Well, also a little bit down on the agenda, and it kind of connects with this, is there's nowhere to put a performing arts building. I mean, really, unless we move Renaissance. That seems to be the most logical thing to do, is to find a new home for Renaissance and location, whatever, and use that space there, for a performing arts building, you know, band room, the whole thing. Anywhere else on the campus, I mean, Liz, please jump in. I don't know where else on the campus it might be able to go.
Yeah, I know we'd have to knock something else down and build up. There's not really any room. I think the most plausible solution is what Superintendent Weinstein, just presented with regard to finding a new place for Renaissance. And then that would make more room for maybe something for, performing arts and our band. So I know we once contemplated, I think maybe Fluelling and Moody mocked up some plans to have an administrative building where our current 600s is and building upward. So I think there's not really much place to go, but I mean, I think I would just reiterate what I said at the last meeting, which is in order to make this decision that we maybe develop some sort of a rubric to help guide us with regard to how we might move forward in terms of impact on students, how much it's going to be in terms of, that fiscal element, what the impact is to the instructional program, et cetera.
All right. So how do we want to go about doing this then? So, what would that rubric look like? There's already, the things, Kevin, the things that are in brown are things we're on the hook for. We've made the decision, they're in flight, right? That money is gone
Yeah.
for all intents and purposes.
Yes, definitely. The 600 building is now under contract with a contractor, and the literacy center is almost done with the design phase. I think we should be working through DSA here pretty soon, and then the goal will be to bid it out in the winter for a summer construction of next year. So yeah, that one's pretty much there. But I think the big question is whether or not we should move forward with a pool while we have this pool. The pool would pretty much go in the same footprint as the pool. We own the next 2 lots on the north side of that space. So we would be able to expand into that if we wanted to build a bigger footprint on the pool. So that space is kind of already right there. So the question is, do we want to move forward with that because we can? Or does that project actually fall lower on a priority list where we want to hold on to the money and wait for, that other location to open up?
Here's a quick question, right? You said we had 2 properties that are empty right there.
Yeah, we have the lot right just on what I would say the north side of that, as you go up Palm Court, and then that's blank. We've already demoed that building, and then we own the house that's the next one.
Is there
Not
a
enough space.
Is there a possibility we could put the band room there?
No, it's
on
not
those
enough
2?
space. They're pretty small lots.
Are they?
Yeah. I mean, trust me, with Scott, we've really went over every potential space. He has lots of interesting ideas. Scott is definitely one. He's good at thinking out of the box. He has designed some interesting, band rooms and nooks and crannies that we have. But I think as far as that goes, there was always that we need to get one more lot up there to get it more contiguous. And then, there's potentially other sites. But the other thing I wanted to throw out there real quick, Measure Q, I believe, was passed in 2008. If I remember correctly, without pulling up the document. And we're starting to make the state list of bonds that haven't been used. And I realized that we only recently gained full access to all the funds. Just last December, we sold the final bonds and got that cash in the bank. But I've had to fill out some reports that say, I promise we're actually going to use this money and we're not just sitting on it and getting interest, and letting our taxpayers pay off debt for, funds that we have no intention to build facilities with. So it is probably important that we work on moving forward with projects and we don't continue to put things many years off.
So here's, so in terms of the priorities, right? Are we really just talking pool, performing arts building, cafeteria, kitchen? Jerry, go ahead.
It seems like we keep coming back to the possibility of moving Renaissance. Where would we move it to? Because it seems like that spot, like you just came up in conversation, that would be a great place for the performing arts band, etc. If we don't have any other place to move it to, why are we still talking about moving it? If we're talking about moving it, where are the possibilities?
There's 3 different possibilities that you can look at. You can look at putting it into a space you own, which right now all our spaces are taken. The second would be to buy property and to drop it on new property that we would own. And the third would be to lease property and to lease, property and drop buildings on the leased property in order to facilitate the movement of Renaissance. So right now, Renaissance has about 125 students. And really for a district our size, Renaissance, kids are not accepted into Renaissance a lot because we're maxed out in our buildings there. So the idea would be that not only would we want to move Renaissance, but we want to add classrooms to Renaissance in order to facilitate, all the kids that would like to be going to Renaissance. So, but those are really our 3 options.
Jerry.
So we don't have any space. What you're saying is we don't have any space in our district to drop Renaissance.
No, not unless we take away space like field space, or we take away classroom, but we can't share classrooms in the same space as younger kids and stuff like that. So it would have to be on a separate piece of property. And so we would have to look for a piece of property that we can lease or buy and then drop buildings on it.
Okay, I have another question about Harvest. I was under the impression that the land that's available at Harvest for a school belonged to the high school district. And it could be used for elementary.
No, well, first of all, it's another thing that, the committee should understand is that once you're unified, the unified district acquires all the assets of each of the other districts. So the land now belongs to the unified district. And when I talk to the owners, Luminares, as well as Lewis Brothers, the construction crew, they actually want us to put an elementary school there. So I think that any type of MOU or anything that we need to do to make an adjustment to put an elementary school there would be easily done. But again, we would have to then, if we say something to the effect of like, well, why don't we put Renaissance there? That is an alternative high school. And we'd have to see if that's something that the builders would allow us to do.
And is that some land that we still have to, is it ours 100%, or do we still have to, we have the right to purchase it?
No, we have 8.3 acres, Kevin, right? 8.3 acres that we have the rights to acquire and build on. So if we don't and we choose to give the land back, then we get fees from the builder. So basically we own it. But we have the right to do something with it for 15 years or something like that, Kevin?
I think it was originally 30, but we're a
Oh,
number
okay,
of
yeah.
years-
All
we're a
right.
number of years into that.
So when we gave up was it 15 acres, the other 15 acres, we received large checks from the developer for that. And I think they still may owe some money for that too, so.
So I think one of the things that we were talking about was, I mean, since we're already talking about bleeding into that other agenda item, right? Is contacting the city and looking at, well, are there other, pieces of property, right? And or either for lease or for purchase. So, I mean, I think we do need to go through that, right? I don't think we have a simple solution for, any of this. Right? Yeah, Kevin, I hear you on we've got to spend it. Is there a way that we could, spend the money first on the cafeteria? I guess, or at least begin some of that renovation up top. Because we know that the band room's underneath it, we couldn't do that, but could we do something in phases?
Potentially, we could look at that.
Is there anything, I mean, is there anyone that thinks that we should move the location of the pool? And are there things that we can do to start renovating the pool, right? Beyond just the, maybe extending it into the other lot, right? Or creating a brand new pool. Like, are there things we would have to do anyways that wouldn't be wasted? So we can start, at least, going along both of those paths until we can fully flesh out if we can, put Renaissance somewhere else.
I don't know if we could do some of the pool space.
Or are there things that we can do that are currently in the deferred maintenance, use our bund money to do it, but reimburse ourselves from the deferred maintenance fund at a later time when we're more ready to construct, like, the performing arts or move along with the pool?
We could get creative. But I think that, in the next year, as strategic planning continues, we're going to be working on the plausibility study of Harvest. And I think that might yield some good data for us, on a demographic study of where all of our students are. And, we're really going to dig into our enrollment projections. And we're really going to dig into all of the construction that's going to be happening around the city, all the development. And so that might yield some interesting data for us, and allow us to consider moving some lines around, moving some of the enrollment zones. And then I think we'll be able to consider whether or not we build another elementary school out on the east side of the city, and if that potentially opens up one of our campuses in the city for elementary, or I'm sorry, for Renaissance. So I think that might be an interesting plan that we can explore next year once we start to have some of that data.
Jerry?
So I hear so many moving parts. Isn't the pool something that we could work on because there aren't as many moving parts? I mean, we just kind of need to make a decision to move.
Yeah,
I know that.
we can work on the pool. We're starting, we are gathering some more information. The last time we talked to the board about it, Daniel requested some more data on a more recent quote on, what it might cost. And then we'll look at some operational data and probably come to you about, we've talked to the city and the Y about operations as well, about, running it. And so we're going to try to package that up into a good information for the board to make a final decision on the pool. Of course, we're always trying to, we're picking information, picking the brains of our people for free right now, because we're trying not to get into an expensive contract with anybody to do the work.
Look, I mean, the way that I view it, right, is that if I were to prioritize, I would probably prioritize performing arts, cafeteria, pool, right? And if we do that, right, we're not going to have enough money to do all three of them within Measure Q, right? So at least not a full build out of the pool, right? So in my mind, that's the third priority of the three, right? That's why I wanted to get, better numbers for the performing arts and for the cafeteria to see how much they really are going to cost. And then we could at least think about, okay, well, then do we want to dip into the special reserve to, fully fund the pool, right? Or do we want to save that for something else? But, I think spending $6 million on a pool to begin with, right? Because we have the money and we can, and then eventually we can't do one of those other two because we've run out of money, right? Is not the right priority. So, Gary.
Kevin, what, you had some information on possible, like the cafeteria not right now, there's not money available, but there will be. Can you go through that again?
As far as the state extra facilities money from the state, yeah, well, there's a big push for scratch cooking and to improve the nutrition at all of our schools. And so the state has been putting money, giving us facilities money. This year, we received, I think, about $200,000 for kitchen upgrades. That was so similar to kind of what the governor proposed for the deferred maintenance. He put some money into a pot and everybody got it based on enrollment. So we got about $200,000 this year. And it seems like they're going to continue to do that. I think he did have some proposals to continue on kitchen upgrades. So it's just yet to be seen exactly how they'll, roll out the programs, whether they continue to just give it to everybody based on enrollment or whether it becomes grant-based. Normally the grant-based ones end up being a little higher dollar amount because you apply for it and hopefully you're awarded. And one of the other benefits we have in Santa Paula is almost all the grants, priorities given to high unduplicated count school districts. So we get almost every grant that we apply for. So if they do roll out some large kitchen grants, hopefully we can get some of that money.
So there's two other things, right? What in the May revised. One was that I think there's going to be a facilities tranche of money of about, I think, $4 billion, right? And so presumably we're going to get some of that facility money. We have no idea how it's going to be dispersed or how much we would be able to get, right? But I think that's probably, that's a fair, significant size of a pot, right? So there's potential for money there, right? That could really help out, that we won't know if we're going to get, or at least even, contemplate until June. There's another bit of money, right? That was about $650 million that was going to backfill what the federal government had been giving us for nutrition, right? So the state made a commitment. If the feds don't fund it, the state will fund it. The other caveat to that is if the feds do fund it, they're still going to allocate that money, but we will be able to use that for kitchen and cafeteria facilities. So any one of those scenarios means that we're going to have more money here, to work with, and we might be able to have our cake and eat it too. So again, to me, I think, again, you know, I have no problems right now, and I don't have no idea how anybody else thinks, right? But making a priority list of performing arts because it impacts educational programming, cafeteria and kitchen because we need to feed our kids, and then the pool, right? And a full build out of the pool. But that last one would be determinant, you know, on condition of getting extra funding and or making the decision to go into the special reserve to fully fund that. You know, given that we need to also get updates, or at least general ballparks on those 3 items, right, to really see what the fiscal impact is. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion, and someone can second, and then we can discuss, right? You know, and amend as necessary. Liz, what do you think? Someone, come on, put their neck on the line. Thank you for the clap, Jerry.
Oh,
Or
sorry.
is that a hand
It
up?
is. I hit the wrong button.
Oh, all right, Jerry, go ahead.
I do
thought
that
you were
all the
clapping.
time. I see a
Yay,
hand
that
and
was a
I
second.
flip it. Okay, did you make a motion, Danielle? I'm sorry.
Yes. So someone needs a second, or it dies.
Can
I'll
you
second
restate
it.
the motion?
I'll
Steph
second the
seconded. Okay, discussion. Go ahead, Jerry.
I don't feel comfortable making a list of the top 3. I think that those 3 should be our top 3, but I think it's going to be dependent on what happens soon. Because that wouldn't be my priority if we get some news about other things in the budget. So I don't feel comfortable ranking them, although, I mean, they're ranked in my head, but my ranking would be on availability of other funds. It would change my ranking.
Oh,
So I don't, putting those in an order makes me nervous.
so this is what I hear exactly what you're saying, right? That's not a build order in my mind. That's once we determine what the money is, what money we have, right? We're gonna, you know, we would go for one first and then the other and then the other, right? And that other is going to depend on how much money we have left over. If everything's fully funded and we go, we can do all 3, then I would say, let's start with the pool, right? So it's that rubric that Liz was talking about. It's what are really the things that are most important, right? But then in terms of if we have the money to fully fund everything, how do we go ahead and build that out? And that absolutely could be a different order, right? So that's what I guess was the intent, or at least, you know, of what I was saying, even if I didn't completely say that. So, but again, we could even table this, right, until I'm assuming we'll meet in August, you know, maybe even July, where we're going to have more information.
We're looking at we're looking in mid-August, like the second week in August. For the next
Does
meeting.
anybody else? So does anybody else have? Liz, you had unmuted yourself. Did you want to say something?
I mean, what I was going to say is some of the things that you were talking about, Daniel, or Vice President Sandoval, sorry,
I call you Liz. You can call me Danny.
is impact, you know, the impact to learning versus, you know, the impact to students' health and nutrition, you know, versus like student participation in extracurricular activities and sports. I mean, all of those are important. And I also, I mean, I look at the pool and I'm like, okay, if we were to just do some like the renovation aspect to the pool, that's something that would happen relatively quickly, and is, you know, less of an, you know, less expenditure. However, if we start looking at like the impact to learning or to students overall, then that's where the cafeteria and band come in. I mean, I would be comfortable starting at any given place. To me, it makes sense though, you know, to start with either the band or the cafeteria, just in terms of the impact, overall impact to students. However, if we look at starting with the pool, it's going to happen pretty quickly, and we're going to be able to, enjoy that facility even, in the near future, as opposed to waiting, a few years for the building and renovation of other things. So, because the band room is contingent upon the move to Renaissance, or move of Renaissance, right? And so there are several things that have to happen in order for that to take place. The cafeteria I would imagine we would be able to make some decisions. Kevin, what would your anticipated timeline be? Like, if on cafeteria, pool versus Renaissance?
My timeline on cafeteria, pool versus Renaissance.
Or just like, how long would each one take? If we were to hypothetically start soon.
That's contingent on having a spot for Renaissance though, right?
Right,
mean,
so that's
that's
gonna
the
push
whole-
that, that's gonna push the start time back there.
Right, that pushes, that's probably a few years before we can identify the place and have it ready for the students to go there. Pool, we could obviously start now, design a year, 18 months to build it. Then the cafeteria, we could start considering the cafeteria. One of the caveats though is that we were really interested in where the band room is right now for the cafeteria, right, which is underneath. So we could start considering, the kitchen space and that upper deck, and maybe we could phase it into 2 phases where we upgrade the kitchen and the upper space first, knowing that maybe in 2-3 years we get access to the lower space and we would be able to add that in. And that's something we can start talking to Scott about, the feasibility of that, because I guess I'm pretty sure, the key with the cafeteria is that we want a bigger kitchen. They're serving more meals that it was really intended to serve. And so in expanding the kitchen on the top floor, you're going to move into the eating area, which is why we were hoping to spill into and expand that bottom space back into, I think, what it was originally, which was like a mezzanine for eating, right?
That's my understanding.
So
Oh, I remember that. Snack bar was there.
snack bar was there. So
French bread pizza.
So if we started by expanding the kitchen into the eating space, how long would we be able to operate with a limited indoor eating space? Because the kitchen grew into it, would be a good question to work on answering.
Like, I'm more than happy to withdraw my motion, right? I mean, I do still think that a lot of this is contingent on a final budget, right? And then in August, we'll have a better idea. I do think that between now and then, we do need to talk to the city, right? And really get a better idea as to, what is the plausibility of actually getting Renaissance, out of the space it's in somewhere else. We have to have an idea. I think we need to, get a list of better ballparks, for the performing arts and the cafeteria. And then we can have a better conversation about, what we're really looking at. So.
I mean, it almost, well, it almost is feasible to be able to do like pool repairs and, the deepening of the pool and, so extending the cafeteria kitchen. I mean, we do have, a couple hundred students who do, use the cafeteria or the cafeteria seating area each day. I mean, we are pretty limited in terms of our space for students to eat across campus. If you've ever been here during lunch, students are everywhere. And we bought, lunch tables and put them all over campus. But, we have been under construction before and, with the science and technology building. And we were able to adjust then. It just seems like we also, I don't know what happens to the Measure Q money if we're having to fill out these reports to the state. All right, it seems like we're at least ready to start a couple of these projects or could adjust, to having a cafeteria start or the project start, and also do some pool repairs and construction. Seems like we could withstand that impact if we started to move in that direction.
A new pool would really rip out the pool that's there though, right? Or would it be we just extend that new pool?
I mean, ideally, we would, love a new pool, but it would basically take the new pool out, is my understanding. And we do have pool designs already, right, Kevin? Like that phase of planning has already been done.
No, we have sketches. No.
Sketches, okay.
Yes.
Got it, okay.
Jerry?
I really like the idea of looking into, could we split the cafeteria? Is that a possibility? I think the board members would really like to have some information on that. That opens some doors. I think that might be a good way to, if that's possible to do, I think we'd like some information on that. I know I would.
Mr. Sandoval, where would the band going when the time would come to do something there? If you don't have Renaissance resolved. If you move to do something in the cafeteria, where would the band go?
That's a good question. We used to be on the top of the girls' gym. I'm assuming that's not a temporary space that they would want to go back to, but I mean, the space that they have is so crammed as it is. Is there any way that we could temporarily house them somewhere and do the entire kitchen? Could they use the auditorium as their practice space?
Well, it would depend on, I think, do we do it all at once in the cafeteria, or does it come in phases? What if phase one was the expansion of the kitchen, and then phase two doesn't come immediately? It comes after there's a place found for Renaissance, and then we expand downstairs, and then we, for a time have additional eating areas, additional tables put out, alternative places identified. I'd never heard of the Bryden Gym suggestion with regard to eating. So, I mean, I'm interested in just knowing what that looked like. Not necessarily.
Oh, not to
proceeding in
eat.
that
No, for the
direction.
band. The band was on the
Oh,
top
the
floor.
band. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I
wrote out a number of earthquakes in that room.
Right.
So-
Yeah, there are other, other possible solutions. We've also got the maintenance warehouse as well. There are some places on campus where we might be able to, or we might be able to use temporarily as we can go through phases of various plans. It's just a thought.
So, I mean, if we're really like hot to spend money, I would feel more than comfortable starting on the cafeteria / kitchen building. I'm less, psyched about creating a new pool. I mean, if we were just going to kind of repair it, then I'd say fine, go ahead, because that's 1.56 million for a new pool. With the amount of money that would be left over, I would really be concerned that we wouldn't be able to do the performing arts, which I think is a higher priority. Again, if we are, in August, past the budget, we know we're going to get an influx of facility money that can, you know, that means we could do the pool and still do the Performing Arts Center as well, I'm more than happy to say, let's do it. I mean, a new pool would be a great resource for this community. You know, I know that I'm just not ready to pull that trigger because I don't think we have enough money to do it all. If we find we do have enough money, or if we do say that special reserve, we're going to take a big chunk of that and put it to a pool, you know, and that would fill up the hole, then I guess I wouldn't mind doing that either, you know. As long as we know how much the Performing Arts building is roughly going to cost, and we have that money, you know, aside for it, so that we don't, like 2 years or 3 years from now, when we actually have the location for it, go, we only got 2 million, can't do it, sorry. Stay in the nether regions of the cafeteria. So, I mean, that's mine. So I'm going to pull my motion. I don't, you know, for now, you know, and again, I think
Before you
August
do
we'll
it,
have more. Oh, sure.
before you do it, I think, you know, looking at all these ifs and if, seems to me that what needs to probably happen is to really go after finding a location for Renaissance, because once you do that, if you can do that quick, then you have better places to move people. Yep.
I would agree. So in terms of action items here, right? And again,
Well,
you know,
You have a motion.
yeah, I think I should withdraw my motion again, just, or at least we table the item until we meet in August, when we have a better understanding of what the governor's budget is going to be like in terms of facility money. I think this has been a furthering the discussion. We've had some more ideas, you know, as to how we can tackle this list. So in terms of action items, I think really, again, you know, updating all of the numbers, or the numbers of the big three, right? Trying to figure out whether we can do part of the kitchen reno, and really start, you know, in earnest looking for a new spot for Renaissance.
All right.
What does everybody think?
Sounds good to me.
All right, I got some nodding heads. I'm just saying, sure, let's go for it. And I got a thumbs up. All right. Let's move to the final item. It's the next year items to be discussed. And this is you guys get to put in your 2 cents on what do you think this committee should be doing next year. So I'm opening up the floor to any discussion on that.
Well,
Yes,
I
go ahead.
think that we need to look at, you know, there's a lot of pressing issues, like when and how, I guess a timeline, the reconfiguration of the schools. I think that's something that, you know, the community is hearing about, and they probably would want to know, you know, where are we heading? You know, the community is hearing that the Renaissance may move, and I think you need to really get information out and say, you know, it's all conversation. We kind of gotta put things, you know, things in order. And then what you just finished talking about is this, these big projects. So I think those are things that we're probably going to come back in August, and we're going to hear about the budget, which is going to trigger some possibilities, right? Yeah. Who knows? Maybe Kevin is going to find a big lot, a big old place where we can put Renaissance.
You know, I think that one thing that we should, oh, Todd, I guess I could ignore you, but you have your hand
That's
up and
right.
everything.
I mean, it
Go
just
ahead.
seems to me that things that are gonna slap us in the face the fastest, right, are gonna be, what are we gonna do with the elementary sites once the sixth graders are moving out? So to make sure we have enough room to do that correctly. what's the route that we're going with Isbell? Because I know, right, you guys have done some stuff with the board to try to figure out if it's going to be a renovation or a reconfiguration, and then get that team going. I'm sure things of, as part of that is what's going to happen during the construction process at Isbell. I think this preschool information that we were talking about today and the grants, once we figure that out, I mean, those are the things where we're going to impact the students the most at the beginning, right? Then the stuff we were talking about, the high school, if we are going to start some of those things, like Liz was talking, well, maybe there's room for the band kids to go here, maybe not. But to me, I think that rather than some of the theoretical things that could happen, we know there are certain things that are going to happen super quick. And so I just think we need to be prepared for those for the following school year ASAP. And then I see Mary just put perhaps the most important thing is, the safety of our campus. And maybe that doesn't, maybe we can't even wait till next year to really have some good discussions about safety.
That's right.
Maybe we need to have, as much as we all love meetings, some sort of a meeting someplace, whether it's in this forum or another forum, to really look at the schools and see what needs to be done. So on day one next year, we have them as safe as possible for everybody in the community. So aren't you happy you called on me?
I always am. Jeff, do you want to speak to that last item in particular? What your thoughts are, or Kevin?
Well,
Sure.
I was just, since we have talked about safety a certain amount, but maybe we make it an item. I mean, I'd be happy to come back with a safety report, probably in August, at least of what we're going to be getting done in the next couple of months. I already shot an email to Doug about getting the gate done at Thiel. But I'll work with Jeff Argent, who, he used to be our safety manager. Now he's in charge of our maintenance operations. So we'll be able to evaluate all of the schools this summer. As I mentioned, we're working on Raptor already. So as we were talking, I kind of made a little bullet pointed list of, before school, during school, after school, how we need to secure the 3 different time zones and what needs to happen. So I'll be happy to work with cabinet during the summer and then come back with maybe a report for review.
I think, and that's great. I think something that we should probably think about how this committee ties in is design days. There's what, Jeff, you got a quizzical look. I mean, because that's a very strategic, like, how are we rebranding? I don't know how we fit in, right? But, it seems like a very strategic plan kind of thing that we're going to be reshaping the schools. But you looked quizzical when I said that. So what's on your mind on that?
No, it didn't change my mind. So in September, we're going to be honing the 2 or 3 areas of branding that they're looking at and start plausibility studies during the first, then to identify what has to happen with facilities for each of the different ideas that they have, or what type of equipment is needed, what type of training is needed, and all those type of things. So we would be able to do that, come to the strategic planning committee probably by the end of the first semester with all that information.
One other thing that I kind of wonder whether this committee would be a good sounding board, or at least, the place for input, is on the learner-centered schooling or objectives. And David, how do you say that? The Devin,
Student-centered learning.
Student-centered learning, like, and whether or not we're really going to make a push for that. If we are, what does that really look like? How does that change, pedagogy and, all the sorts of things that are going to be needed to kind of refocus how we teach kids.
Right.
And not just like the nuts and bolts in terms of the facilities and the money and where it all goes.
So we already have a contract with learner-centered collaborative, and we got the feedback results from the over 1,800 students that responded with the survey leading up to Design Day, which was really telling. But they're going to help us. I have a meeting with them June 9th and they're going to take us through the process of developing a what's called a guiding coalition for the for that process, and then the Learner Center Collaborative then will be working with each of the sites in the implementation of those strategies. So it's a 3-step module. Step 1 was the design day, and then we're going into module 2. I'll find out more about that on June 9th. And then I think module 2 will take us all the way through next year, and then the year after that will be module 3. So
Jerry.
I'll have a little bit more information June 9th when I meet with them.
Jerry, what do you think about what we should do here?
Now what? I've got lots of thoughts. I really want to go back to what Kevin said. Thank you so much for really moving the security to top priority. I think that's what our community wants for all our children. And they'll be glad to hear about that. Thank you for working on the things that you can do during this summer before students come back. So that's my main priority there. There's going to be a lot of planning that's going to be site-based. And I think a lot of our decisions, our input needs to come after the sites. See what they're doing. You know, the K-8 school, all those decisions are going to come after we have information from the sites. More town halls that we're planning to do. I think this committee needs to hear all that data before we can move forward with anything that has to do with the learning-centered instruction and that whole style. I think that's out of our realm right now. That's in Dr. Moore's realm and the sites and everything that he's planning to do that the teachers are so excited about. I loved it hearing from the teachers just a day or two ago on how excited they are for that whole movement. So there's excitement brewing that's going to come up, you know, from the ground level up to us. And I think we need to pull back on anything that deals with that until we get data from all the different sources that we want to get data from.
All right, does anybody else have any other comments on this committee's purpose for next year? All right. Oh, Lorenzo, yes. You're on mute. You're on mute.
I was really
Yeah.
hoping that somebody other than me would say that, would make a motion to have air conditioning be put in Mary's office. So I know it's kind of way late, but I was hoping that, you know, one of the board members would have said, you know what, I think it's a good idea. I think it's a great idea,
Well, I won't be around to enjoy it, but I'm sure the.
but
new
that's
people
okay,
will.
Mary. Every
And
part
the-
of your
and the
legacy.
office staff as well. That's the whole office, so.
Yeah, if we could have some information on which schools don't have air conditioning in all parts of their school, I think the board would like to hear that.
And then we can we dedicate the air conditioning in Grace Field in that office to Mary? Put a clock on it.
For Miss Maxwell, you mean? The new.
All right.
Put a
All
plaque
right.
on the condenser when we install it.
Okay, so do we need to have a vote on that, or is that Kevin just get it done? Got it.
We'll get it done.
All right. Okay, if there's no other comments, I kept you a little bit longer. I apologize for that, but this is our last meeting for at least a little bit. And I'll adjourn this meeting at 3:41 p.m. If we don't see everybody, have a great summer.
Thank you.
Thank
We'll need a new principal, elementary principal representative on the committee, but I'm sure Mr. Weinstein has someone in mind for that. So thank you for allowing me the opportunity to be a part of it. Have a great summer, everyone.
All right.
Best of,
Take
best
care.
of luck to you,
Congratulations.
Mary.
Thank you.
Don't be a stranger.
I won't.
No, no.
I won't. Thank you.